Alright guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you a Protection Paladin DPS guide. So you probably clicked this video thinking the Meta Goblin has absolutely lost his marbles here. I think the lockdown is definitely getting to his head because Protection Paladin isn't a DPS class. But I assure you this is a very serious video, although a very niche video on how to optimize your DPS in the protection spec as a tank, as a Protection Paladin. So you may be thinking, why would you want to do that? Why is that important? First reason it's important, obviously, it's because of threat. If you're generating a lot of threat, it means that other DPS can generate more threat by doing more damage. So you can increase the damage of a raid by increasing your threat generation. Secondly, if you change your rotation slightly, or well, not really change it much, just add a few things to your rotation without sacrificing any mitigation, you can very easily double your DPS. So if you can do an extra 200-300 DPS, you may as well do it at the end of the day, because why not? And in some fights, your increased DPS is actually really useful. For instance, Nightbane, if you look at this screenshot, I was actually doing more DPS than a lot of the DPS in my raid, and that's because a lot of the time in certain fights in raids, DPS have to move around a lot, which can really nerf the DPS of particular specs. But Protection Paladin or any tank spec, they just sit on the boss the whole time and deal damage the whole time. So sometimes you're in a unique position to actually do more DPS, or at least compete with DPS, than actual DPS classes, just simply by the fact that you're on the boss 100% of the time. And you've got absolutely infinite mana when you're main tanking, so you may as well do it. So I'm going to split the video into 3 sections. First of all, we're talking about different openers that you can do and the importance of different seals and judgments and all that kind of thing. Then we'll talk about the main rotation, the main tactic, which is a seal twisting tactic, which is different to any seal twisting that you've probably come across before. You may have come across it, but I haven't come across it before, so it's not seal twisting in the way that you'd think. It's a very different kind of seal twisting, so I will talk about that when it comes to it. And then lastly, I'll talk about AoE DPS, which is obviously very important for clearing trash packs. So let me go through a default opener. Normally Protection Paladins, what we're going to do is pop Seal of Righteousness and Holy Shield kind of just before they enter combat. The reason why you pop Holy Shield nice and early is because if you look at the tooltip of Holy Shield and actually read it properly, Holy Shield causes 35% additional threat. So basically you want to be doing Holy Shield damage as early as possible because it obviously generates extra threat. And then you probably going to use Avenger's Shield, or if you can't use Avenger's Shield, normally it's Avenger's Shield straight into a Judgment of Righteousness. Or if you can't use Avenger's Shield, you just use Judgment of Righteousness. The reason why we do Judgment of Righteousness is because it benefits massively from your spell power. According to WoW Wiki, in July the 4th, 2008 on WoW Wiki, it benefits from about 71.43%. I don't know whether Endless WoW have that 100% accurate or not, or depending on what server you're playing on, but that's what it should be, and that's probably what it's going to be if Classic TBC is released. And obviously, because it benefits so much from your spell power, it is actually going to generate a massive amount of threat. So it's almost like a mini taunt. And that is it's a fairly decent opener for beginners, in my opinion, particularly if you're not extremely well geared and you don't have a massive amount of spell power. As you can see in my character, I have about 266 spell power, and I can increase that with this Drape of Righteousness here. Basically, that's your pretty much go-to opener when you're starting out doing dungeons at level 17. You don't have a lot of spell power, but when you start to get more spell power, you can adopt a very different rotation, different opener, which I'm going to go into now. So first of all, I choose my seal, which is either going to be Seal of a Crusader or Seal of Wisdom, depending on what group I'm in. 25-man raiding is normally Seal of Wisdom because we get a Ret Pally to use Seal of a Crusader. If there's 10-man raiding, I'm normally going to use Seal of a Crusader. And then obviously Holy Shield into Avenger's Shield, and then I'm going to judge, and then I'm going to go straight into Seal of Righteousness, Seal of Vengeance. Then I'll probably pop a Consecration to generate even more aggro. I like to go into Seal of Vengeance nice and early. The amount of threat that it generates is really nice, rather than going for Seal of Righteousness opener. I've never really had issues with dropping threat with this opener on like Nightbane and stuff like that. So I definitely recommend just going into Seal of Vengeance straight away as your opener and get those stacks up as early as possible. Because you obviously want to get to 5 stacks, where it's ticking away at 240, I think, 240 every 3 seconds, and then the Judgment does loads of damage because it obviously benefits from your spell power, and it does 847 damage, so that's actually quite a lot. That's nearly as much as a Retribution Paladin Seal of Blood Judgment, so it's not too bad. So let me talk about this seal twisting technique that I've come up with. So let me draw your attention, when that annoying tree gets out of the way, to the Holy Vengeance dot. As you can see, I've got the bar set up, and you can see it on the debuff bar there. What's happening is my melee hits, all they're doing is refreshing Holy Vengeance at about 10, 12 seconds. But the thing is, these melee hits, they're not doing any extra damage with Seal of Vengeance on the target. And well, basically they're a waste of time. These melee hits are a waste of time because all they're doing is refreshing the dot. But like, you could just refresh the dot when it gets to about 5 seconds. There's no need to refresh it when, you know, it's only at about 12 seconds. I like to treat this Seal of Vengeance as like a Warlock dot. It doesn't need refreshing like all the time. So during this time, you may as well swap to Seal of Righteousness and then do a little bit of extra damage on your melee hits. So let me show you. Normally, I wait for it to totally refresh. If it's going to refresh. Sometimes you get really unlucky and it doesn't refresh, but normally you don't. Apparently slower weapons, they have increased chance to actually proc Seal of Vengeance than faster weapons. But anyway, so when it refreshes there, I use Judgment, and then I use Seal of Righteousness straight after. And I let it tick down a bit, normally to about now, about 8-7 seconds, and then I go back to Seal of Righteousness, and then I use Judgment again when it refreshes. It's going to refresh on a melee hit, you ready? There, and then I go back to Seal of Righteousness. Do a little bit of extra damage on my melee hits, and then depending on how much you want to risk, I go back to it on 7 seconds this time, refreshes, totally fine. And then you can actually use a Judgment there if you wanted to, but obviously you don't have to. So what I'm doing is basically getting a little bit of extra holy damage on my melee hits. I'll show you one more time. Back to Seal of Vengeance to refresh it. Even when you go this far down, you can refresh it. You can risk going down to 5 seconds if you really want to. I'm not doing that at the moment because obviously I have to commentate over it. But like, okay, we'll go to 5 seconds now, and I've refreshed it, Judgment, bosh. Very straightforward. So let me finalise the technique. First of all, you're going to sit on the target and wait for the stacks to get up to 5. So now I've got 5 stacks. I'm going to wait for a refresh of the ticks and then Judgment. So you wait for the refresh. Well, first of all you need Seal of Vengeance on the target. Obviously remember to reproc it. Okay, there's a refresh, into Judgment, Seal of Righteousness, then I'm going to wait for the Judgment cooldown. About now. There comes a refresh and then Seal of Righteousness. One more time. About 5 seconds, or when Judgment's just about to come off cooldown, then you swap back. And you follow that very simple pattern, and it massively increases your DPS. You'd be surprised how much more DPS you're actually going to get out of this. So back in Seal of Vengeance, and then back. So that's basically the technique. The other next tips that I can recommend to obviously increase your damage even more: use Consecration whenever it's available. Obviously if you're main tanking. If you're not main tanking, you may actually, you know, lose so much mana that you will not be able to cast your spells, so that's probably not something you want to do. But if you're main tanking, you have infinite mana, so you can use Consecration whenever it's available. Obviously Holy Shield whenever it's available, because you actually need that mitigation. That's absolutely essential. And then when it comes to Avenger Shield, when you cast Avenger Shield, you lose all of your mitigation. That's what someone told me on stream anyway. So you only want to use Avenger Shield between melee swings. So when a melee swing comes in, for instance on Nightbane, the second he does a melee swing, then you cast Avenger Shield, and you should be able to fit it in, especially if Heroism's up, within, basically between melee hits. Or if he's casting magic spells, a boss that casts any kind of magic, you can just use it during phases where he casts magic spells, or certain mechanics where he's basically not melee hitting you, because if he melee hits you through when you're casting Avenger Shield, you're just going to take loads of damage. It's really not worth it, because you're not going to block it. You're going to take full damage. You could even take crushing damage if you're really unlucky. So definitely don't do that. The last tip is Avenging Wrath. So I would only recommend using Avenging Wrath when you have 5 stacks of Seal of Vengeance, because obviously when Seal of Vengeance is fully stacked, first of all, the dot is going to be doing maximum damage, and your judgments are going to be doing maximum damage, so that makes sense to use it during that time when you're actually ramped up to do your maximum damage, and hopefully be able to pop it twice in a fight. Last thing actually is exorcism. Obviously if the mob is undead or demon, sorry, you may as well use exorcism whenever it's available. So let's start talking about AoE DPS. The first ability I want to talk about is Holy Wrath. If you've played Holy Paladin, Protection Paladin, you've probably tried to use Holy Wrath a number of times to little to no success, because unfortunately Holy Wrath is a casted ability in TBC for some reason, which is frustrating. I think it changed to an instant ability in Wrath of Lich King. So a lot of time, even with concentration aura up, you cast Holy Wrath and you basically cannot get the cast off at all. And then obviously while you're taking melee hits from mobs, you have absolutely no avoidance and you just end up dying. So that can be very frustrating. So you have to be intelligent about how you use Holy Wrath. For instance, when I'm pulling certain mobs in Karazhan, what I like to do is I pull the mobs and I run away, and then I cast Holy Wrath, and then I may stop cast it and start it again, so that when they start melee hitting me, they're melee hitting me about at this time, like about now. And they'll only stop the cast like a little bit, and normally the cast just ends up going off and doing its maximum damage. So basically preemptively cast it before the mobs come into melee range, and you'll find that quite useful. Other tactics, you can basically coordinate with the other tank, the main tank, just tell him to pick up the ads, and you're going to pick him back off him by using Holy Wrath. Because if you use Holy Wrath on mobs in Karazhan, you're automatically just going to pull all of them off the main tank because it does so much damage. So depending on how much raid healing you're actually receiving, whether in a 5-man group or a 10-man, 25-man group, you're probably going to be using Seal of Wisdom most of the time, in all honesty, because Seal of Wisdom grants you infinite mana, so you can pop as many consecration. I can't say it. I've tried 3 times now. Consecrations, I think, right. You concentrate. Oh my god. You can use as many consecrations as you want with Seal of Wisdom, basically granting you near enough infinite mana. And in my opinion, because it allows you to get more mana, you actually end up doing more DPS and more threat with Seal of Wisdom. Although in like shorter fights you may want to go Seal of Righteousness, because you actually need to generate a little bit of opening threat. But normally, running in there with Holy Shield, getting a few mobs to hit you while you've got Holy Shield up is going to be a great opener for like a massive amount of burst threat. And then you can survive by using Seal of Wisdom and yeah, just spamming Consecration and you're totally fine. So yeah, obviously use Holy Shield whenever it's available, because you need it for that mitigation, you obviously need it for the threat as well. And obviously you can also do pulls of Avenger's Shield if you're able to do it, which generates a massive amount of threat, but I would not recommend going back to Avenger's Shield in any situation really, apart from when we talked about main tanking before, where you can confidently fit in Avenger's Shield between melee hits, because if you're taking down multiple enemies, then there's no way you're basically going to cast Avenger's Shield very quickly, for one, because you're going to get meleeed a lot, so the actual cast time is going to be really long, and obviously a really long cast time where you have absolutely no avoidance, so you're massively going to put a lot of pressure on a healer to keep you alive, because you're going to be taking full damage when you're casting Avenger's Shield. So normally I wouldn't recommend it. If you're overgeared for whatever dungeon or raid you're doing, then you may do it for a laugh, but a lot of the time I would not recommend you doing it because it is quite risky. The last thing I can really talk about is this trinket here called a Figurine of a Colossus. Basically, whenever you block, it heals you for 120 health, and it lasts for 20 seconds when you use it. When you use this in conjunction with Holy Shield, you'll be surprised how much healing this actually provides. If you're doing like some kind of dungeon farming, you basically get infinite health. Your health like skyrockets up, and in a realistic raiding environment, you will get quite a significant amount of healing. So I definitely recommend trying to get this trinket and using it, because first of all, it actually gives you a massive amount of avoidance rating with that shield block rating, which is really nice. This is one of the main items that's getting me avoidance cap, to be fair. And obviously it does provide you a massive amount of really useful healing, even on like normal boss fights as well. Decent amount of healing, but mainly for taking down difficult trash packs and ads, it's really good at keeping you alive. And obviously you can use Avenging Wrath for even extra AoE damage. A lot of the time you can very easily out DPS all the other DPS in a raid as a Protection Paladin, because their AoE damage is so good. Probably going to struggle to out DPS a mage or a warlock if they don't die anyway. Obviously another tip I'd recommend is when a warlock or a mage is going hard on AoE DPS and you know that they are, a lot of the time between I hover my mouse over the raid frames and I spam Righteous Fury like this. Sorry, Righteous Defense. I just spam it because I know that he's eventually going to pull aggro. So I normally spam it while I'm doing my normal rotation. So like when he gets aggro, I basically instantly get the aggro back. And that's pretty much it that I wanted to talk about. Apart from one last thing, there's always more to talk about. I'd recommend keybinding a very low rank version of Consecration on your action bars, like I have here on Shift 0. I think it only costs, like, rank 1 is about, if we actually go to the correct page, rank 1 is only 120 mana, so that's not too bad. It's actually pretty decent at maintaining aggro as well, because aggro is mostly generated by, it's more about the frequency of holy attacks than the damage of holy attacks, if that makes sense. Obviously the damage of holy attacks makes a significant impact on your threat as well, but the frequency of the attacks is also quite important too. So sometimes low rank abilities like Consecration and other things like that can actually massively increase your threat just simply by the fact that you're using the abilities. But anyway, I've definitely chin-wagged for too long there. That is going to be the end of the video, guys. My name is Metagoblin. Until my next video, ciao.